Great. I'd love to hear from Reverend Dr. Linda Anderson, Long Island Area Council, or LIAC.
Take a breath. Enough oxygen that you won't all fall asleep. I'm the president this year serving the Long Island Area Council. That's 11 UU congregations on Long Island. And Long Island is not called Long Island for nothing. It's 100 miles long. And no matter what time, day or night, there's a traffic jam. So we are challenged, we 11 congregations. But last year we did Beloved Conversations. And it was the seed for my wardrobe today. It says, Long Island Unitarian Universalists for social justice, siding with love. You too can have one of these shirts. It was a project that we undertook as LIAC, as the 11 congregations. But what is Beloved Conversations? Maybe not everyone knows. It's a program that was developed by Mark Hicks. It's administered by the FOS Collaborative. And it is an 8-session program that begins with a day-and-a-half retreat that gives us an opportunity to learn about history, learn about the history of our areas, examine our own attitudes and learnings about race, and then think about what we can do in our congregations. So we did it as LIAC, as Long Island, and people from 8 of our 11 congregations participated, and there were about 40 of us who did it. Long Island has these 11 congregations, but most of them are small, I mean like 10 people. So we needed to band together. We're very aware of that here, because if we don't, we're doomed. Most of the congregations on Long Island are small. Only 3 have full-time ministers. And so we did this together as a cluster, 100 miles apart, traffic jams apart. So we had 3 groups, one in the east, one in the middle, one in the west, and we met. It gave us a sense of community. It gave us a sense of doing things together. It was a great undertaking. It needed a lot of planning and that kind of thing. And Kimberly Quinn Johnson and I were the 2 who nudged everybody to do this. The success is that we did it. It's as simple as that. That every group had people from at least 2 or 3 different congregations in it. We got to know each other. We did something together. We examined something together. And it led us toward now, this year, we've actually hired someone to be our social justice coordinator. And we have T-shirts, and hoodies are next. But the struggles are very real. I asked all of my co-facilitators to talk about their experience, and I'm going to read a little bit of what they said. We took lightly the advice to not run a group unless you had more than one person of color in that group. And I think our group suffered for it. They suffered in any number of ways for it. If I'm remembering from our debriefs, having one facilitator and one person of color in the same group was not sufficient. Groups need to have more than one participant of color. There's a challenge there in situations where, especially on Long Island is one of the most segregated areas in the country, where you just might not have more than one participant who is a person of color. And then what do? You tell them not to come? You tell them they can't be part of it? What do you do? That remains an open question. We want to offer this program again. And that's a real, what do we do? What do we do about that? Another facilitator felt there needed to be more context around why white folks need to shift their perspective and why white supremacy is detrimental to humankind and Unitarian Universalism. And others remembered other seminars they took at other seminaries where the leaders spent more time at the beginning highlighting the history of the legislation and the profound inequity and prejudice and injustice that comes from white supremacy. But in our beloved Conversations group, we didn't feel that we had enough of that grounding. So in our groups, we were all over the place, which I think is inevitable, that you're going to be all over the place. But it made it hard because while you might have a couple of people in a group who understand microaggressions and are a little bit attuned to them and hopefully attuned to when we do them, and you have other people in the group who never heard the word, and you have other people in the group who argue against it because the intent was not to offend. It's hard to bring a group like that together as a group, and we met as small groups for 8 sessions. We had to be a group, and we had to try to achieve some coherence. And it's really hard. I think everybody knows that. It's really hard because we're not on the same page. I'm not sure we can ever start on the same page, but we were hoping, as facilitators, perhaps with a little more background and a little more grounding, we might have been on page 100 and 107 instead of 100 and 306. It was hard. The curriculum itself was overstuffed. We became really kind of weird, at least Kimberly and I, who facilitated a group together, about time. Okay, we're 30 seconds over, oh no. We got there. Those who were in our group know that, and you guys are here. The curriculum itself was overstuffed, and that put pressure on us, and we didn't feel free enough to modify it. And we did how modify it? You know, it's a very well thought out curriculum. We had a lot of struggles. We had a lot of challenges that continue to exist. Another thing is that when people didn't have a lot of experience with the background of white supremacy or even why we're doing this, but nevertheless we're part of Beloved Conversations, they fell back on personal experience. And are you giving me a signal? Oh, you're scratching her nose, okay. They fell back on personal experience and anecdotal experience, and we all do this. What happens to me, I assume, happens to everybody. I'm universal, I'm the universal measure, but in a conversation like these we were having, we can't do that. We have to be able to see and believe what other people are saying. So that was another way that background knowledge of racism as systemic and the lack of it tripped us up and made the groups a little bit harder, made for some resentment within the groups, which made all the facilitation harder. And one other thing that we experienced, 4 of us facilitators were ministers, and 3 of us had people in our congregations as part of the group. And that became tricky sometimes, as you want to say something, or you don't know how to say something because you have a relationship with people that goes way beyond the Beloved Conversations group. So for the facilitators, and I imagine for participants, how do you navigate that? And I think that all of these things, in terms of not being on the same page and a lack of background knowledge and assuming that our experience is the experience of everyone and dual relationships, I imagine that extends out to a lot of this work and not just Beloved Conversations. And these are challenges, I think, that we all face and can help each other through. But we have to name them and face them. Would those of you who are in the Long Island Beloved Conversations raise your hand? Because quite a few are here. And if you want to talk to anybody about it, please do. I recommend the program highly. It's hard, but absolutely worth it.